jumping back in here to the show now and looking at the second episode of Hard Knocks that dropped yesterday. I wanted to keep talking about this just because it's such an interesting like project that the NFL is doing, I guess, with an in-season version of Hard Knocks, just because one, they've never really focused in on a whole division like this, and I think it's a great idea, obviously, because of the fact that you have so many things to kind of keep track of how, one organization handles things compared to another one, and maybe, one's doing very good, like the Steelers and the Ravens, and the other two, like the Bengals and the Browns, are having one of the roughest years in the NFL. So you get all these different sort of reactions, personalities, responses to adversity, and different things that they go through, on the day to day that you don't obviously get to see from the outside looking in. And I think that's this is one of the coolest projects that the NFL has done in recent memory. I've never really tuned into Hard Knocks, but now that it's a whole division, especially the AFC North, I had to tune in, and I've been very, very satisfied with what I've seen. The first episode I thought dealt a lot with the Steelers because, the Steelers aren't really a team that gets selected for this sort of thing. They've never actually been on Hard Knocks before. So I thought the first episode did a lot on them, getting people that might not be so familiar with the Steelers and Mike Tomlin really getting a good understanding of what he is as a coach, and with some cool experiences as well in that first episode. But the second episode that dropped yesterday, I thought had a lot more to do with how, focusing in on each team, getting each team their own, little moment, their own spotlight on how the coaches, handle things in different ways, how they prepare, the motivational part of it, how there's different ways that, Kevin Stefanski, showed leadership, to how Zach Taylor did, to obviously Mike Tomlin. And they did it in different ways. You didn't see a lot of Baltimore, really, because they're on their bye week, so you only really got like one moment with them before they went their separate ways for their own, things that they had going on, going on time away or anything like that. They had a meeting there, and they got this one moment, and basically John Harbaugh was addressing the team to just let them know that, get your mindset right, getting the full feel of the landscape before the official bye week started, and just basically telling them that to get their minds right, to get their physicality right, and then just to get right spiritually as well, because one of the quotes he said was that they had an 8-game season going forward from this point on. And I thought that was a pretty cool moment, just because, one, you didn't see too much of them, but also I thought it was a cool message just because, having a bye week, this late, and really gearing up for the latter portion of the season, and not only the regular season, but also the playoffs, obviously, with their aspirations. I thought that was a pretty cool message to just kind of, not forget the first part before the bye week, but to understand that that's already done and dealt with. You can't go back and change it, to now look forward, because the next 8 games is going to be a whole different season on its own. So just to get right, come back with a new mindset to just attack the rest of the games, I thought was pretty cool. And, just seeing John Harbaugh, orchestrate that message was also pretty interesting to see. But similarly, in the same way, kind of to that, we saw with the Pittsburgh Steelers and some more of Mike Tomlin. And some of the things I took away from it that I thought were pretty cool was the fact that, just a simple meeting early in the week before, they really got into the whole thing with the entire team. The Mike Tomlin had a meeting with, it seemed like, the captains or the leaders of the group, with Najee Harris, Pat Freiermuth, all 3 quarterbacks were there, and Cam Hayward might have been there, but he might not have been. It might just have been the offense. But even seeing that was pretty cool, right? And the kind of message that he, tried to express to them, how all these divisional games are about physicality and execution, not to focus on anything like style points or anything like that. Basically, just reaffirming the message that comes with playing in the NFC North and playing against these teams twice a year, and especially a team that beat them, the first time around. I thought even seeing that meeting was pretty cool, and also the way he set up the game plan with Myles Garrett was kind of funny. He had a pretty funny graphic up there for the meeting, so that was pretty cool to just keep it lighthearted, but also to really hammer the point home to the rest of the team that this guy ruined the game for us the first time around. So how did they try and avoid that? Obviously, was pretty interesting to see. Also, the wide receivers, it was a pretty big point, obviously, in this episode with George Pickens being, out with the injury. So we got to see a little bit of the Steelers wide receiver coach, Zach Azani, and, during his meeting, telling his guys to be prepared in case George can't go, and, to just be on their game. If George Pickens wasn't able to go, which he wasn't, how they were able to still be prepared. And it was cool to see it kind of play out that way on the field, right? With them kind of preparing for it in that scene that we saw. And then on Sunday, seeing how well Van Jefferson played, Ben Skoranek played, not on offense really, but on the special team side of things. Calvin Austin made a couple plays. Pat Freiermuth made some plays. Mike Williams had a big catch. All those guys where you see it in the meeting, a couple days after, and then you kind of go back to it and think, wow, like, he said that message, and then on Sunday they sort of executed it. That's the part of it where I think connecting the dots like that really makes a series like this pretty cool. And then one of the coolest parts of it, I keep saying it because it was also fascinating, because, this moment with Joey Porter Jr., even with him and Mike Tomlin, after Porter had 6 penalties against Cincinnati, him and Mike Tomlin had a pretty riveting conversation during just practice, just kind of like before everything got started, and how Mike Tomlin just essentially came up to him knowing, about the penalties, obviously, and whatnot, and how that could be a struggle, just basically going up to him and reaffirming it, and basically just giving him the message that there's going to be these sort of bad moments as you have this great career. And Joey Porter mentioned how he wanted to be great, right? That he wants to be great ultimately, and Mike Tomlin just basically gave him the message that, greatness takes time. It's a process, right? It's not this sudden thing where you obviously want it, but it's not going to happen in year 2, especially. You're going to have rough moments like this. So to see him give him that message, and Joey not only receive it, but afterwards you see him working one-on-one with his defensive back coach and having a better game against the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. It's that connection, again, where you see the conversation, the work being put in, and then improving on Sundays is where really I think this series really hits it on the head. So that's what I took away from the Steelers' point of it. Then you get to Kevin Stefanski, and I thought his was pretty interesting just because the Browns are having a really bad year, obviously, right, with Deshaun, and the record obviously speaks for itself, right? But I like how Stefanski was, the way he communicated with Jameis Winston especially, and the rest of his team, I thought was super cool. He's a super positive guy and just supportive of Jameis Winston. The little interactions that they have in practice, during the game, also the trust that he showed in that Denver game was also like great to see, just because at one point where Jameis had he just crossed over 400 yards, and basically Kevin Stefanski said in his headset, Jameis Winston's balling right now, essentially. Let's make sure to give him the ball as much as possible. And, that sort of confidence where, again, the season's not going great, obviously, but to still have that belief in your players was awesome to see from him. Even if the Denver game didn't go well, to see that from him was cool. And he showed his offensive line a clip during the meetings after the game, and he kind of made it like a lighthearted joke where Jameis threw the interception, and he showed how each offensive lineman hit their top speed of the entire season trying to tackle the guy that intercepted the ball. And I thought that was a cool message too, just essentially showing them that, the play didn't go well, obviously, but the fact that they cared so much to show that sort of effort on that play kind of reassessed everything and brought everybody together in a moment where, yeah, it didn't go our way, but the fact that you guys are still sticking together was awesome to see. And it just speaks to the kind of leader, right? To keep everybody together and still motivated was not only him, but it trickulated to other parts of his team, with the defensive line coach also, letting the senior players talk a little bit during his meeting, and Myles Garrett giving some advice to the group, and Shelby Harris also. I thought his little speech there during their meeting was pretty honest and true, where he mentioned how you got to find your own motivation in this thing, and how some of the players aren't going to be back next year. So you're essentially playing to show all the teams, what kind of player you are, and kind of help yourself going forward, even if it's not on the Bengals. So that kept it pretty honest in that moment. So that was also interesting to see. And then once we get to the Bengals, arguably the best part of this episode was with Zach Taylor, similar to Kevin Stefanski, saying that, it's not been the kind of season that we've wanted. We obviously wanted to win the Steelers game, but he mentioned early in the episode how the biggest motivation for him would be after the Dallas game, being in that post game locker room after a victory. He wanted to have that feeling again. He wanted to be in that moment, celebrating with his team once again. That's what was keeping him motivated. So for him to kind of start off the episode with that, and then at the end of the episode, see the Bengals obviously beat the Cowboys, and that be the ending scene with the team celebrating and basically Zach Taylor manifesting it all. I thought that was the coolest part of the entire show, where Zach Taylor's keeping his guys motivated and manifesting this sort of little wins that they have at certain points of the season, where they get a win like this, and they technically keep their playoff hopes alive, but it just a win in general did this group a lot of good. So those were only a few of the things. I could have talked a lot about other parts, the more personal parts with Jameis Winston and his family, TJ Watt and his family as well. They talked about the history of the Pittsburgh and Cleveland rivalry, which was pretty cool. Joey Porter Sr. talked about it. Jamar Chase had a nice moment there with a Bengals fan that had survived cancer, Brixton Wood, and their interactions was also awesome to see. So there's a lot more things that I could have talked about, but those were the biggest talking points in my opinion. Just looking at how each coach approached, his job. It's all the same job, right? Head coach, but how each of them brought something different to the table was pretty neat to see at the end of the day. And I'm going to just keep, watching, obviously, because I'm completely hooked. I'm definitely going to keep tuning in. But for us on this show, we're going to get to a couple more topics here. We got, on the topic of the AFC North, we got the Steelers coming up, and their next 4 games are some of the toughest games that any team has faced in the NFL, just consecutively. So we're going to talk about that and what we think the Steelers' record will be after their last 4 games here of the regular season. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.